Hi, welcome to Tactical OP and Neo's Handguns and Reloading. I'm OP, and there's Neo. Hey guys, for this video, I'm going to be setting up the Hornady taper crimp cedar die for 9mm. Okay, this is the die that comes with your taper crimp 9mm Luger set. Right here. Okay, or if you buy the die separately, which I have because I have a second die that I use for loading hollow points. Since I have modded the insert in my taper crimp cedar die for round nose, I've modded it for plated bullets, which I have that mod in a different video on how to do that. Okay, so first thing Hornady says for us to do when we get our die set is to disassemble the dies and clean them completely. Okay, mine's already been done, but I will disassemble it real quick and show you what we need to do to put it back together and to get it set up on the press. Okay, before we get started with everything, some things we're going to need. Okay, of course you need the die out of your set, or if you out of the package if you bought it individually. Lock and load bushing with the lock ring. You're going to want to have some casings that are cleaned, ready to go, some bullets, calipers, reference material for loading 9mm. Really, this is vague. Go to your powder, the website for the manufacturer of your powder. Let's see if I can, how this will turn out on my phone. Okay, we can see this. Okay, I am using Tight Group. Okay, so I went to Hodgson's website for loading data. Entered 9mm. Okay, here's my spec right here. Case overall length. Okay, that's how deep. That's what we're going to use as a reference to know how deep to sink our bullet into the casing. So we will need that spec. So if you're using a different powder, pull up your manufacturer's website for loading and see if you can find the overall case length that you need. Okay, mine is 1.150. Yours may be the same, but I do not know. This is the powder I have always used on 9mm. Haven't used any other powder, so I don't know how other people's specs are, but that's what we got for this. Also, you're going to want your powder scale, small Allen wrench for the lock bolt on the lock ring, and I believe that will do it. Okay, I want to set the camera down so I can have both hands free here, and we can take apart this die real quick to clean it if you haven't already. There's nothing to it. Top lock ring, we just take that loose. We can unscrew the cedar adjustment part of the die. Okay, you got a rubber O-ring right here that you're going to want to take off of the adjustment bolt. Just kind of spin it off of there, set that off to the side. You do not want to get any cleaner on any of the rubber pieces, causing them to swell or anything. So that bushing and lock ring out of the way. Okay, you know, when I did mine, I just left the lock ring on here. Just moved it to a different position, ran it up and down. As I sprayed it off with, I use Spray Clean. If you can find the Hornady dry lube, the gun cleaner and dry lube, that's supposed to be some really good stuff too. The One Shot seems to be pretty scarce. Every time I see it available, it's gone before I can order some. But anyway, brake cleaner works fine. Carb clean, that'll work too. Okay, so now we're going to take the second lock ring loose for the actual crimp adjustment. And we're going to unscrew that piece as well. Take off that rubber seal too. Kind of just roll that one off here. This is more like an O-ring, where the other is a flat rubber ring, almost like a gasket on a garden hose. Okay, same here. I didn't take my lock nut off of the adjustment bolt here for this for the crimp. Just clean it, spray it really good. Okay, now we're going to dump out the die body. A couple of different pieces here. Set the die body out. You can go ahead and spray this out now. Okay, there's no rubber pieces left in here. It's good to go to clean. Okay, then you have our actual crimp insert and our bullet seating insert that is sitting inside it. Okay, so you want to clean off both of these pieces as well. Okay, like I said, I have modded mine. You can see how it is the shape of a bullet. It's aluminum foil, it's JB Weld up under here, and I have that video posted on YouTube as well, how to mod it for loading plated bullets without leaving a ring around the plated bullet. So this works really well. If you have done this adjustment, I don't just spray this off with brake clean. I'll spray brake clean or carb clean on a rag and wipe it. Okay, I don't really like soaking this in cleaner after doing that. I'm afraid it may not last like that. Okay, this piece, which is actually the insert for the crimp, you can spray that off with cleaner too. Okay, so we're going to be loading round bullets. Okay, so this part, this is if you had the actual flat tip bullets that you were loading. This comes in your die set. You just set that off to the side. We're not going to use that. Okay, so let's just go ahead and put it back together like we had it. We're going to grab our cedar insert. Okay, the wider portion upward. Grab your bullet cedar insert here. Drop it right in the top of the crimp insert. Okay, now we're going to grab the die body. I'm going to drop those two as a unit right down into the die body. You'll see how they float in there. Make sure they're dropping all the way down and move freely. Okay, now set the die body down for a second because we got to put this O-ring back on the adjustment bolt for the crimp. So we just roll that right over the top of the threads. I'm gonna back off that lock ring, kind of get it close to the top here, and push that rubber O-ring up against our lock ring. Okay, now we can go ahead and thread this into the die body. Run it down there a little ways, but we're going to need to have this pretty high up once we get in the press. We can go ahead and run it down now, and then when we get it set in the press, we'll back off of it. Okay, let me set that back down again. Alright, we want to grab the flat O-ring and the cedar adjustment screw. Put that O-ring, or gasket, whatever you want to call it. It's more like a gasket than an O-ring since it's flat. Put that all the way up against the lock ring. Now we're going to drop that in the top and run it down a little ways. And that's all there is to putting this thing together. Nothing to it. Okay, so now we're ready to put this on the press. So we want to go ahead, I want to position the camera where we can see the press. I'm going to go ahead and grab one of our lock and load bushings, put it in the 5th stage, and lock it in. Okay, now we're just going to start our lock ring onto our die. So grab your bushing lock ring, and we're going to just run that onto the die. And the die body on this, you know, all the other videos I've done about setting up your dies, I did it with 40, loading 40, and it's straight across the board. It's the same thing on the 9. This die here is where they part ways. Okay, it is a different setup than the 40 Smith & Wesson cedar die. Okay, you have two different adjustments on this die. And then you also have the die body, where you set the depth of the die body, where on the 40 you're setting your crimp with the die body, and you have a cedar adjustment on top. So it's a little different. Okay, after a quick battery change in the camera, we're back in business. Okay, we're going to grab our taper crimp cedar die. We've got our lock and load bushing in the 5th stage of the press. And just set the die top of the bushing and get it started for now. Just run it down a little bit. Okay, now we want to index our press. We want to get the shell plate up at the top and leave it there to set the depth of the body of this die. Okay, so we're going to index the press, leave the handle down where the shell plate is up. Okay, now what we want to do as far as setting this die, we're going to screw it further into the bushing while paying attention right here. Okay, we're going to back your lock ring up where you have plenty of room to run this die down into that bushing. Okay, now we're going to start turning the bushing, start screwing it down, or turning the die. We're going to start screwing it further into the bushing while looking right here for the die body to come through. So keep tightening, keep running the bushing down, and we're going to start seeing, okay, I'm starting to see the actual cedar and crimp inserts coming down. Those will telescope up into the bushing, back up into the body of the actual die here. Those will telescope back up in there. So until you feel resistance of the body of the die contacting the shell plate, just keep tightening. You will see actually a wider portion start coming down as you start getting close. Starting to come into view now. Okay, I gotta back off my lock ring more. Didn't back it off far enough. Okay, keep running it down. There it is. Okay, and you're gonna watch as the shell plate, because it's spring loaded, it's got little springs under the detent balls under it. Okay, when I actually have pressure of this die body on that shell plate, you'll actually see it move a little bit right there. Okay, so as I feel it contact that shell plate, I want to back off just a little bit. Go to where it contacts, back off just slightly. Okay, now we want to run this lock ring tight without turning the die like I just did. You're using two hands, it's a little bit easier. I'm going to try to hold the camera where you can see better. If I set the camera down, you're not going to get a good view of it, so I'm going to have to reset mine a little bit since it turned on me. Back to where it makes contact, back off just slightly, hold the die, turn the lock ring, and tighten down the lock ring with your fingers. Okay, now you can grab your small Allen wrench and tighten the set screw in this lock ring here. So I'm going to go ahead and run that in. And the die body portion is set. Cool. Okay, so now let's grab our lever press, pull the lever back up and bring the shell plate back down. Okay, now you can see here's our die. Cool. Alright, next part of this, let's back off. We've got our cedar adjustment backed off a pretty good ways. Let's get that where it's almost out of the threads here. Back this lock ring and gasket off a little bit. When it's almost out of there. So just up there pretty high. So just so you know, it's not going to make contact with anything until we get ready to do an adjustment on there. Okay, because we're going to preliminary settings for the crimp, and then we'll go in and we're going to set the bullet cedar adjustment depth. So right now we want to back off the lower of the two lock rings now. Back off that ring, run that portion out a pretty good ways. I've got it out probably about, I'd say about a ½ inch from the bottom of the O-ring to the die body here. Okay, that's probably good. Okay, so right now I'm going to grab a casing. Doesn't matter if it has primary or not. Okay, I'm just grabbing a casing. This one actually does, but I'm going to set it in the next position that's going to be up for the cedar die. We're going to run that casing up. Leave the handle all the way down again, where the shell plate is all the way up. Okay, now we're going to turn this portion, which is the crimp adjustment, start running that down. And you feel there is no resistance on it. It's just turning right now. When we feel resistance, that means we have made contact with the casing. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. We want to run it down till it touches the casing. Okay, I just touched it. And it's right at the point where it's touching, I want to stop turning it. So I'll back off and feel it's free. Go back. Okay, that's where right there's where I'm making contact. So for just a preliminary setting on this, because we will go back and do a fine-tune adjustment on it, but I want to set the camera down for a second so I can do this. Okay, we're going to, right where it makes contact, we're going to tighten this lock ring here. And we don't have to crank on it because we've got to come back and do this again in a second anyway. Okay, we're going to have to come out and put a little, just a slight turn on this after we get this bullet cedar adjustment set. We're going to have to come back and turn this in, just this adjustment in, just slightly to put our crimp on our casing. So I'm not really going to crank on this too much right now. Alright, I've got that set. So now we're at the point that we're going to go ahead and bring our shell plate back down. And grab our casing. Okay, we're going to have to go through the process of making a bullet now. So I'm going to turn on my scale. Get that ready. I'm going to put a casing in the press. I'm going to run it up. I've got my depriming pen backed way off so it can't deprime it. So I'm going to go ahead and run it up through the sizer. It has a primer in it, so I don't need to prime it. I'm going to go to the next stage, which is the expander. I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to bring it over to my scale. I'm going to zero my scale out. Put the casing on there, hit the tear weight button. I'm going to put it back in the press just for the stage before the powder measure. charge it with powder, cycle it around, and measure my powder. It should be 3.9. That's what I need. 3.9, right on the money. Okay, and I'm going to put it back in the position on the shell plate that is next up for our cedar die. I'm going to grab a bullet, set it in the top of the casing, and go ahead and run it up. Okay, now we're going to do the exact same thing we just did on this adjustment with the cedar adjustment. Back off your lock ring away so you have room to mess with it. Start turning it until you feel it make contact on the bullet. Back off my lock ring a little bit more. I just felt it make contact. I'm touching the bullet right now. Okay. Now, I'm sure there's about 20,000 different ways to do this, so I want to show you mine. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. And get out of the light. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, and since we have charged our bullet already, there's powder in it, we don't want to kick that bullet out into our tray without that bullet seated in there, without it seated in the casing and dump our powder everywhere. Okay, so that's why I want to two-hand this thing. I want to slowly bring the shell plate down, and then I'm going to hold the lever without bringing the shell plate all the way down. I'm going to bring it down probably, I don't know, say, what's that, a couple inches right there. And we still have our adjustment loose with the cedar right here. Okay, I'm going to give that 2 half turns in. And we're just trying to get the bullet set in there right now so we can get a measurement on our case length and then adjust it closer from that point. So now that I've gone 2 half turns in, after backing down on the plate a little bit, I'm going to go back down with the lever so it pushes that bullet into the casing. Now we're cool to go ahead and cycle it down, bring our lever all the way up, and let it kick it off into our bin. Okay, set the camera back down now so we can do our measurements. Okay, now if you know your spec on your powder for your case length, and like I said, mine is having to cheat and look at where I pulled it up, 1.150. So turn my calipers, zero them out. Okay. Now, it is normal in the beginning to be way off. Okay, and then we'll have to run it in. 1.1975. Okay, not terrible. Probably, I probably won't even go half a turn in on this. So, we're just going to do the same thing we did. Except now we don't have to worry about it dumping powder out. That's what's cool here. Okay, so we're going to put it in the slot next up for the cedar die. Let's go ahead, and I want to run mine in half turn, and I'm going to punch it right back through and remeasure. And that's pretty much what this process is. You're going to keep doing this until you get down to your spec. Okay. And I am scaring it right now. I mean, 1.164, and I need 1.150. So now we're going to really start taking small adjustments. So I will probably just go about 1/8 of a turn. I'm going to put it back in the same slot, and it's a repetitive process to get this right. Okay, we'll run it back up. And measure again. Okay, now we're getting very close to my spec. 1.156. I want 1.150, so this is going to be a very, very, very slight adjustment. Just about like that. Maybe I don't know, I may have turned that in 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to go ahead and spin this lock ring down where it's kind of holding this adjustment snug, since I've got it so close to where it needs to be. I'm going to put this bullet right back in the stage next for the cedar die. We're going to run it up there again and measure again and see where we're at. But we're close now. Okay. One point 1.1495. Okay, that is very close enough for me. Okay, so good deal. Now let's measure the case mouth with the bullet inserted in. Our adjustment on that is 380. We should be really close. 0.377 to 0.383. You do not want to exceed 0.383 and may not chamber. Okay, so I'm at 0.3785. That is good right there. Okay, if this adjustment right here, if this measurement was over 0.383, then what we would need to do is go to the cedar adjustment, back off this lock ring, and tighten this slightly. Just screw it in just slightly, and then after you do that, you go back and you have to remeasure your depth of your bullet again, just like we just did on the cedar adjustment. Okay, usually it doesn't change it much because you're not making major adjustments here, but it might change it slightly, so you need to go back, make a bullet, and measure both the case mouth and the overall length, and make sure you're within spec. Now this one's in spec. We're at 0.378. That's cool. Like I said, I talked with Hornady on this on their technical. An issue I had originally with one of these dies was when I ran the shell plate up. Okay, I had a bullet in there, set in the, when I seated the bullet, when I went to come back down with the shell plate, I mean, it would stick. A serious pop. Okay, what they were telling me, what technical told me from Hornady, is that I had my crimp adjustment too tight. Said really, the crimp adjustment is pretty much an aesthetic thing anyway, you know. But you know, hey, I want the slight taper crimp. That's why I bought this die. So they were telling me that as long as we are under 0.383 on the case mouth with the bullet inserted, we should be good to go. Should chamber. So this 0.378 is great. I'm good with that. So what we can do now is tighten down both our lock rings. Set the camera back down. Tighten down both our lock rings. Okay, now this is what I like to do, just because this bullet has been pressed and pressed and pressed when doing our adjustments. We're going to start fresh. Grab another casing, put it in the press, go up to the sizer die, prime it, expander die, take it out, weigh it, get tare weight, clear it out, put it back in stage right before the case activated powder measure, run it up, charge it, cycle it over here where I can pull it out, and weigh my charge. 3.9, exactly what I want. Set it in the stage of the shell plate. Next in line for the taper crimp cedar die. Grab us a bullet. Set in there as straight as we possibly can. And run it up into the taper crimp cedar die. Okay, now I want to measure this one. See if these measurements are consistent with the ones we had when we were adjusting the die just a minute ago. So I want 1.150 on my length. Whoa, slipped off of it. Okay, this one says it's just slightly longer. I was 1.1495 a while ago. This one's 1.1505. Still good, but you can see what I mean. It changes just slightly. It's tightening those lock rings, or maybe we pushed from repetitively seating the bullet in that other casing. Maybe we pushed it in a little further than what it would go on a fresh casing. So that's why I want to go back and measure this stuff. Okay, so we're good there. Measure the mouth of this bullet. 0.3785. Okay, case mouth. There we go. Yeah, 0.3780. Okay, so we're good there. As long as we're under 0.383. So we have made the perfect bullet. And that's all there is to it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. And once again, thanks for watching.
Oh, this is so boring. Let's go do some more gun reviews.